All of a sudden, on a Wednesday afternoon, we got an announcement that school was closing down that day, that the kids should be sure to clear out their lockers if they had eyeglasses or sports equipment or a musical instrument in there, because we weren't sure when they'd be coming back to school. So we had about an hour or so, an hour and a half maybe, lead time. And the kids kind of collected their things. And I really think nobody believed that we'd be gone for more than a couple of days. Students left, and teachers were advised that we would have Thursday and Friday. That was a Wednesday afternoon. We would have Thursday and Friday to come in and out of the building and get whatever we needed for the, who knows how long, for the foreseeable future. So we were all scrambling around our rooms the next day, gathering things and trying to figure out how to teach remotely.
Welcome to Life Became Very Blurry, a podcast from the Vermont Historical Society, sharing the experiences of Vermonters during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Amanda Gustin, Director of Collections and Access at the Vermont Historical Society. Over the last 3 years, I've led a team to collect the history of COVID-19 through oral histories, archival material, objects, and more. We know that we're just getting started, but for the 5-year anniversary of the start of lockdowns, we've put together excerpts from oral histories that offer a look back. Every part of life was impacted by COVID-19, but you could make an argument that schools were hardest hit. Students, teachers, parents, and everyone else who works in education suddenly had to reinvent everything that they were doing, with really high stakes. In this week's episode, we focus on schools, from kindergarten through high school, remote learning, and the challenges it all brought to teachers and students.
I'm a student at Vermont State University, Castleton. I've been going to school in Vermont my whole life. My experience with COVID really began in high school, my junior year. I went to a school that had both Vermonters as well as international students. I remember when COVID was not quite here in the U.S., but it was happening in some of my friends' home countries, and we were all just kind of waiting for it to come here to the U.S. They were starting to wear masks, and it all seemed pretty kind of scary, but also really strange to see people kind of dressing up in protective wear when everyone else is just kind of going about their normal business. I definitely felt very a little scared, a little just uneasy about things. We always had a morning chapel at my high school, and so I got to see everybody in the same place every morning, and it was always different from day to day. It was just kind of strange to see every day more and more people started wearing masks, and when COVID finally hit my school, we immediately had to shut down. I remember we had to just immediately go home. Not really a whole lot of information was given out, just that something big was coming, and everybody kind of had the sneaking suspicion of what it was. But not really a whole lot of classes happened, as it was kind of the end of the semester for my junior year. But my teachers attempted to explain what was happening, but nobody really understood at the time. We did eventually start doing classes online, but it took a while for things to kickstart, not really knowing how Zoom worked or how they were going to deliver classes to hundreds of students at the time. So a lot of it was just kind of hanging out at home waiting for direction.
the governor declared that late March that we were not going to be going back to school on March 26th. And remember, we had a meeting. I'm like, okay, how are we going to move forward? And all online, of course, but it was tricky because I had not used Google Classroom before. We were having to do all these online meetings, and it was learning new technology and learning it through emails and people setting up directions on how to do things. And so you're trying to learn something online and do it online. And we were getting probably between 100 and 200 emails a day as teachers. And all these people that were saying like, oh, we're homeschooling now and teachers aren't working. I was, for the entire spring, it was 10 to 14 hours a day that I was putting in. And a lot of it was just sitting and reading emails, and we would try to figure out how to give directions and how to make videos to teach math lessons and send out information to students and families so they could learn how to get on. And once they knew kind of the process of getting online and getting to their Google Classroom, my teaching partner and I tried very hard to make it be something that parents didn't need to be there to do. We decided that we weren't going to try to have students set up meetings with us to do Google Meets with, but I did a morning meeting every day, and we had about 10 to 17 kids that regularly came to morning meeting, and we'd all get on our Chromebooks, and we would chat for a little bit. The kids were excited to see each other and to see me, and we got to see everybody's pets. I got a puppy in all of that, and so people got to see my puppy Forrest, and we would do fun things like have a scavenger hunt, and I'd give them like a go find something yellow, and they would all run away from their devices and then come back and hold up their yellow thing. And it was a lot of fun to come up with some ways to have social interaction with kids that were so much craving that social interaction. A lot of everybody was kind of on their own device in their house and doing their own thing. Parents were trying to figure out how to do work from home, and siblings were trying to figure out how to do work from home as well, and share time online and all of that. And so we tried to be as flexible as possible, and we would just have open camera time where kids could go onto their Google Classroom and just click the link to our camera, and I would be there sitting on my own Chromebook, and if they needed help with their math work, that I was there to work through problems with them, and we learned how to share our screens and all sorts of things, and I learned how to make the assignments be something that I could send out that kids could do writing on through a program called Cami. But it took a lot of time to create all those documents and to put in the text boxes for students to respond in, and then to correct the work took a long time as well. It took 17 seconds for every document to upload on my computer from the time I clicked on it. And so it just took a long time to even see the work. And then you would have to click here and click there and then type a message to explain what they needed to do to fix it. And then you had the kids that would just send in a blank assignment so they could tell their parents that they had turned in their work. And so there was a lot of back and forth. But I think we had 38 students, and having to look at all of those documents. And then there were some kids that didn't have any device at home, had not picked up their Chromebook from school. And so we were trying to put together work that they could do that didn't require instruction, but because there was no one there to provide it for them. So we would email our school secretary the documents, and they would print them out, and then they would either mail them, or there was people that would deliver them when they were delivering school meals, and bringing that work to students. it was tricky because there was a lot of kids that didn't show up, and you worried about them. You worried about their learning, and you worried about if they had food, and if they had, like, if they were taking advantage of the resources that the school was making available. There was a lot of work going on at the school with providing meals and delivering meals, and making sure that families were taken care of as best as we could take care of them. In the spring, we would have gone to the St. Albans Historical Museum and done a walking tour around Taylor Park, and learned a little bit about the history of the buildings that we were seeing. So I shared all of that information with families and encouraged them to kind of go out on their own in a very socially distant way to be able to, like, just go walk around the park and read about the buildings that they were looking at. We had a little paragraph for each building, and several students did that and took pictures of them out in the park with their parents. And so we tried to make it fun. Again, trying to make school be something that could be as normal as possible for our students, and to give them actual work and learning, but to give them lessons and to give them time to be able to come online and see their teachers and be able to go over work or answer questions together. And the kind of the same handful of kids that showed up for our morning meetings would be the ones that would come and do math with me. I had probably 4 kids, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, that would come almost every day, and we would sit and do our math together. And as hard as that was, I feel like that I gained such a close relationship with the kids that came online a lot, because I got to spend one-on-one or one-on-two time with them. And when you have a classroom with 18 or 20 kids, you can't stop and spend 30 minutes with each student and chatting and doing work together, but also getting to know each other. And for those kids, I really got to know them very well and got to have a really close relationship with them. And so that was definitely a special part of the pandemic, was the kids that did show up online. I had a really close relationship with, and when we finally were able to go back to school, that was able to carry through.
I was at Green Mountain Union High School over in Chester, Vermont. It's kind of a small school. Really thought we were going to go back after 2 weeks, so I also decided, I'll use this as like a vacation, a break, and then kind of didn't do schoolwork for 2 weeks, which was not a very good idea. And then I stopped going because we weren't in person anymore. I also did not do my online classes like with Zoom and stuff. I kind of just stopped. And I was working in a nursing home at the time too. So I used that time to I went from being a full-time dietary aide to a full-time cook, and used that to just make more money since I had free time.
I'm the kind of person who asked a lot of questions in class, and it was difficult to have a minor question that in person would have taken 5 seconds, but in online school you have to email a teacher and then they get back to you in 2 to 3 days, and there was no reminder of what you need to do. I've never been someone who's good at remembering to do homework, and everything was homework. I was in 9th grade when the pandemic happened, and then I finished 9th grade doing online school, and then I started 10th grade doing online school. And not only was the online school program difficult, no one liked it, even the people, even the staff. and I wasn't able to do online school, so I actually ended up unenrolling in 10th grade when I turned 16, and then re-enrolling in school after the pandemic.
And even when we came back in person and we were still doing kind of a hybrid thing, you know, there were still questions about COVID and being worried about COVID and how this was all going to work. I think there was a lot of back and forth over the summer because there was still some uncertainty about, you know, vaccine and all of those kind of things. When we first started out, the only kids that we had there were what we called phase 1 kids. And they were students who either were having trouble connecting to internet, or they had parents who were essential workers and had to be at their job and could not provide childcare for their kids. This was a small group. I want to say it was about 20 kids. So they started out our first 2 weeks of school. Everybody else was still remote. And then what happened was our hybrid, it was kind of like an on-off kind of thing. And Wednesday, nobody was there. So it would be a Monday, Tuesday, one group of students would come, and then a Thursday, Friday, students would come. And there were so many regulations in terms of how desks had to be placed and how students could sit. I mean, we had dividers so that kids were separated. We had times built into our school day where kids washed their hands. We didn't use our cafeteria, and we actually didn't have specials either. Our specials teachers still taught remotely, and students did that in their classrooms. Lunch was delivered, breakfast was delivered to their classroom, so everything was pretty self-contained. Like, we had sign-up sheets outside of every single classroom. Like, people had to sign in if they entered the classroom and if they exited the classroom. So if we had students who got COVID, we could trace and let people know that they had been exposed and to test. And during that time, that put a huge burden on our school nurse to be doing that and figuring that out. And she had to do a lot of work on weekends when we would find out about students who had COVID and really backtrace all the places that they'd been. So again, it was a lot of uncertainty and just all of these checks to make sure that we were trying to stave off COVID spreading further to other people. You know, and again, I say to a lot of people, like, I can't wait to see, like, the COVID generation is definitely going to be affected moving forward, really, for the rest of our lives by what happened, you know, for those 3 years at least, because it changed their whole world, and it changed them as kids and how they interact with each other.
To close out the episode, I'd like to share one example of how educators worked to build and maintain connections with students during the pandemic. Here's Meg Allison, school librarian at U32 in Montpelier, as she describes how she and her colleagues kept the books flowing.
This was an essential need. To me, books were an essential need for our young people to have access to every bit as much as food. We just figured it out. We brainstormed and made it happen. And our elementary schools followed suit, and they would bring their books here. U32 became like ground central for that milk crate brigade of materials going out to schools. So here at school, the dominoes fell pretty quickly. We knew Wednesday was the day. Wednesday was it March 11th. that like Tom Hanks came down with COVID in Australia. The NBA was going to cancel its season, and Donald Trump's, stopped travel from Europe. And so for some reason that, like, for me, and I think a lot of people, it cued in that something big was happening. I was on Twitter a lot. Vermont educational professionals had a really active Twitter presence amongst ourselves. And we used a hashtag VTED. And a lot of us were urging the governor to, what was the terminology we used? To flatten the curve, right? And to close schools, because we saw that other states were doing it. That Friday was the announcement that schools would close that following Wednesday. So Friday the 13th, we knew that on Wednesday, school would be completely closed. We had 2 more days of in-person learning. So in my library here at U32, basically what I did was opened up the doors to all staff and students and said, check out as much as you want. I personally was in a place that I felt like it was going to be catastrophic potentially, and I didn't want to be without any books or movies, and I felt the same for my students. I took out myself 92 items from the library, and in the course of 2 days, we circulated almost 2,000 books and materials out of this library. I had staff and teachers coming in, leaving with boxes of books, and students, we have these summer reading bags that we have them fill up. We had them fill up bags. And mind you, almost 2,000 things circulated. I have a student population here of just over 700 students. And that Monday and Tuesday, we had very few students here. By the time Tuesday afternoon rolled around, a lot of parents did not have their kids come to school that Monday and Tuesday. So just in the immediate, we just circulated a ton of stuff. And I just wanted books in kids' hands. We had no idea then that it was going to be a long-term dismissal from school. And then it was just shifting everything to figuring out, how do we get books into the hands of kids now that we can't be in the building, kids are learning from home. And this became especially apparent in early April when we found out that school would be remote for the rest of the year. We thought at the time it might be 2 weeks, and then we thought, well, maybe until April break. We didn't know. And then, of course, it was remote for the whole year. So I have a co-librarian, and we have a full-time assistant in the library at the time. And so we coordinated between the 3 of us. We have an online a website, but that became extraordinarily robust. We have a catalog, luckily, that's online, as a lot of libraries do. I came in 1 day a week. We created a form that we sent out to all our students so they could look at our catalog and request books through it. And then we figured out where they lived on the bus route. And we created a system where we had milk crates for every school bus. We knew the students, what bus route they were on, and we would put their books in a paper bag to protect their privacy as patrons, because still what they check out is private to them. Their parents have FERPA rights and can see what they check out, but not the bus driver, the person delivering that. And so the buses were going to every bus stop to deliver food. School breakfast and school lunches were delivered every single day from U32 to the entire district. We were 5 sending towns. East Montpelier, Calais, Worcester, Berlin, and did I say Calais? East Montpelier, Worcester, Berlin, 4 sending towns. Middlesex. And so that's how we got books distributed to students. And it was this milk crate brigade, and a lot of schools in Vermont ended up doing a similar service. Some schools opted to have books available, and parents would swing by and pick them up, and we used our school buses to drop off books. And we just got a lot of anecdotal feedback from families and students that they looked forward to that every day, not just getting a lunch, but getting their library books. And so teachers use that system to distribute art supplies, the art teachers. Classroom teachers use that system to distribute their textbooks or any printed material. And I came in once a week and filled the orders for the books. And behind the scenes, my co-librarian and full-time assistant, we helped locate the books, get them in hand, and communicate to students. So that's how we got books into their hands. So we had a lot of staff that no longer were doing the job they were hired to do. So a lot of staff were, their jobs shifted to being the school bus personnel that would help deliver. So they helped bring back books as well. And they would come back into the library, crates of books every week, and we would put them into a quarantine. So at the time we didn't know, we knew COVID was airborne. The word fomites was a word I used a lot at the time because we didn't know like the aerosols and how long how long they would last as contagious germs on top of a book, for example. So we bought lots of rubber gloves and we bought disinfectant wipes. And the School Library Association, Peter Langella and I looked into the research and what other schools were doing, and we decided that we would recommend like a full week quarantine for books. So in the library, we had a system where we would just shift the books and have them in quarantine for a week after they were returned. And so out of an abundance of caution, as we know now, and then we check the books in. And, it was a system that really worked. And the following year when we returned to school, we had some students were here for 1 week and then were home learning remotely the opposite week. Our middle school students were here full time, but they were in their potted classrooms where they couldn't move. We still used that system. Our school library was closed to students the entire year back from COVID. So the year of 2020 to 2021. And I remember talking to my English department almost in tears that fall, just missing students so much and wanting opportunities to go into classrooms and work with teachers, because even though they were potted, they had access to students, and I couldn't see students in the library. They couldn't come into our space. So we still delivered. We used the same system, but we were able to do it in-house, and we would deliver to pods the books, and they would still order their books. And very interesting way to do it. But we kept our circulation numbers up. We realized that students still wanted to read books, and that books are such a comfort in times of crisis and uncertainty. A lot of our students found a great source of calm and healing and connectedness through books. We still had book groups that we would meet virtually in the evenings. We still had author events and poets come, and we just did it all virtually.
You've been listening to Torley Fisher-Sass, Emily Demers, Nicole Patterson, Nina Neptune, Freya Snyder, Ray Frauman, Brooke Paxton, and Meg Allison. The Life Became Very Blurry podcast is produced by me, Amanda Gustin, of the Vermont Historical Society, and Mary Wesley, Andy Kolovos, and Will Hamilton of Vermont Folklife. Oliver Perdue mixed this episode. Our theme music is the track Never Mind the Forecast from Burlington-based artist Expected Guest. Find more from Expected Guest on bandcamp.com. The interviews heard in the program were created as part of the Vermont Historical Society's Collecting COVID-19, a Vermont Story oral history project, and were conducted by me, Marcia Bosek, Mark Johnson, and Amber Wingerson. We had additional project support by Teresa Green and Tessa Brimblecombe. Funding for this work was provided by a grant from IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services.